If you have any problem during the course of the thing, just tell me and we'll stop and get settled in. Mic goes out or something, we'll work through it. This is one of those come and go kind of things. You know, we've got this event and another one. So there could be people coming and going all during this event, and this, you know, probably like a city council meeting. People come in for their issue, they listen, and then they leave. So don't let it bother you or upset you as people come in and leave. Okay. Welcome to the fourth of 5 forums that we have for the city elected offices in the city of Fayetteville. Yesterday we conducted 3 of those, and today we'll conduct the other 2. This first one is for Ward 4, Position 2 on the Fayetteville City Council. As I said, I'm Wayne Mays with the Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce, and it's our pleasure to be able to present this civic, I should say an event maybe, but we want people to learn what's going on in the city and what the candidates stand for. We are delighted and very thankful to the Fayetteville Public Library for hosting us here and allowing us to use their facilities, particularly their audiovisual facilities at the back. And they are streaming each of these events. They're also recording them, and there are links available either on the Fayetteville Library or Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce websites or social media. So you'll be able to go in and take a look at those, particularly these candidates I'm sure are going to want to see tomorrow, check in and see how they did. We also are happy to have a presenting sponsor, Ozarks Electric and Ozarks Go. They are very interested in good government, as are we at the Chamber, so we appreciate them sponsoring this event and helping us get it done. The objective here is to give candidates the opportunity to communicate to voters, those of you here and those that will be watching the recorded videos. This involves the process called a forum, not a debate. So the candidates will not be interacting with each other, and I will ask questions. They'll respond directly to me. Certainly one candidate may listen to the response of another one and address that response, and that'll be fine, but as long as they address it to me, we won't have any problems there. We're happy to have Mary Barnard with us today. She's from Arvest. She's one of the, are you a graduate or a member of the class? She's a member of the current Fayetteville Chamber Adult Leadership class. That's a program we're very proud of. If any of you are interested in it, let us know. A lot of folks in our community have benefited from participating in the leadership class, and Mary will soon be an honor graduate, I'm sure, of that program. Okay, we'll have a 2-minute opening by each candidate. Then I will ask them questions and they'll respond. And they will have up to 2 minutes to answer. And I want to be sure everybody hears me, up to 2 minutes. If I happen to ask a question that only requires a yes or no answer, yes or no will be fine. Nobody's going to think that you shorted them on your reply. You have up to 2 minutes, but you do not have to use the entire 2 minutes. As we discussed before we started with the candidates, Mary will be letting them know when they have some time left and then when their 2 minutes are up. And I'm sure they're going to observe that. I want them to finish any statement that they're in the middle of and not do a quick stop. Okay, there are no gotcha questions. I want to make sure everybody understands that. My objective here is not to try to catch somebody short on an answer or find some lack of knowledge that they may have. Our whole objective here is to communicate to voters, actually give them a vehicle to communicate to voters, and we know they're going to do that. All right. Candidates, any questions? Okay, timekeeper, any questions? Are you ready, Mary? All right. So let's get started. The 3 candidates for Ward 4, Position 2, from my left and your right are Brandon Spicer, Monique Jones, Todd Hertzberg. To make it simple for me and everybody else, we're going to do everything in alphabetical order by first name. So they've all agreed to let me call them by their first name, and that's how we'll proceed, and they'll rotate answering the questions so nobody always has to answer the question first. We're ready for opening statements, and we're going to start with Brandon, closest to me, and work our way out. Brandon, please give us your opening statement.
Thank you, Wayne, for your hospitable introduction, and thank you to the Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event, this exchange of opinions, this marketplace of ideas. This is democracy in action. Thank you to our sponsors, who are Ward 4 members, I might add, Ozarks Electrical Cooperative and Ozarks Go. Thank you for doing this. And thank you to our other candidates for being here and for your willingness to try to make the city of Fayetteville a better place to live. I grew up in Hot Springs National Park, a ninth-generation Arkansan with a family of dairy farmers. I understand the meaning of hard work and the necessity of working together. I've always admired the call of public service. From a young man, I was drawn in as a Senate page in the Arkansas State Legislature. My interest grew as I became involved in Boy State and Boy Scouts, where civil service was strongly encouraged. I'm also a proud Eagle Scout. I pursued this interest by attaining degrees from the University of Arkansas in political science and communication. After college, I began my career working in the Arkansas Federal Delegation, working for Arkansas members in the U.S. Senate and the United States House of Representatives. While I have experience serving Arkansans in Washington, D.C., I am still just an old country boy at heart. I enjoy backpacking, canoeing, hunting, and Razorback baseball. I've always had one foot in Arkansas and was proud to serve my state in my hometown district. While many take great pride in the University of Arkansas, Fayetteville, Arkansas is much more than a college town. We are fostering businesses that are nationally competitive. Ward 4 is growing at the speed of sound. We are the growth region. We have families, small businesses, public school teachers, blue-collar workers, and young professionals working together to move our city forward and build a community of which we can be proud. When people rent a hotel room for a hog football game or college graduation, they are staying usually on Weddington Drive in Ward 4. We are a public-facing representation of Fayetteville. We are Fayetteville. When people drive through town on I-49, they are driving past West Fayetteville, our ward. We must shine, and we must work tirelessly to improve day-to-day life for our residents. I'm running for City Council to bring equitable appropriations to West Fayetteville. Historically neglected, West Fayetteville deserves much more. It deserves better. We like nice things too. I look forward to hearing from the other candidates, and again, thank you, Wayne, for the opportunity.
Thanks, Brendan. Monique, your turn.
Thank you, Brendan. Hello, my name is Minister Monique Jones. I am a full-time minister at the historic St. James Missionary Baptist Church, and I am employed there full-time as the Director of Outreach and Community Engagement. What that means for me and my family is I do everything for the community outside the four walls of the church. That's where real work hits the road. I am a mother of 7, a grandmother of 9, yes, 9, 8 granddaughters and 1 grandson. I'm just super excited. I also have a daughter that's here, and she is at Fayetteville High School. She's a Bulldog. My last daughter graduated from Fayetteville High School, who now lives in Milwaukee. But Anastasia Jones goes to Fayetteville High School, and she's a Bulldog. She's a child with special needs. But you know what? Her mom is going to let her be the best that she can be in Fayetteville. We moved here in 2012, and I can tell you, she moved here when she was in kindergarten. We moved here on a 2-year contract. I have 25 years in human resources. I've worked in transportation in Dallas-Fort Worth. I was part of the light rail startup. I saw growth in Dallas change a whole community, not just the communities downtown. I saw changes ensure that communities were thriving. Transportation changed the value that it brought not just to downtown, but suburban south, suburban east, suburban west. You can now take a train from downtown Dallas all the way to DFW, the airport. This is what I see that's happening in Fayetteville, is we're growing and we're thriving. My goal as your next city council representative for Ward 4 is to bring tradition and progress together. I was born and raised in Minden, Louisiana, a little small town 20 minutes outside of Shreveport. We owned land, and I was raised next to my great-grandfather, who taught me values that I will never, ever lose, and that's loving your community. First and every funeral I went to was standing room only, that I knew what he did mattered not just for us, but for our community. What I bring to Northwest Arkansas is that same value. I run a food pantry in Northwest Arkansas. During the pandemic, we fed 1,500 families a week. Right now, it's about 900 a week. And believe it or not, those numbers are increasing. They're increasing because Arkansas is #1 in the country in food insecurity. What are we doing in our communities to support growth, to support the vision, and to support people to be able to thrive in this community? Thank you.
Thanks, Monique. Todd?
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event this afternoon. Thank you. Ooh. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Monique.
Thank you, Monique.
Thanking people. Yeah, so if pushing a button is important in city council meetings, I've already failed that one. So I appreciate, let me just start with this. I appreciate, Monique, that what you do with the food pantry. I haven't been a part of it by any stretch, but I've observed it from afar for what meets, what makes the public eye. And you're doing incredible work, and I thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Brandon, I'm sure you're doing incredible work at something, but I don't know what it is. So the last time I ran for any office, I was a sophomore in college, and usually to run for student body president or president of whatever they call it, I think it was student body president. You're a junior, but I ran as a sophomore. I got whooped handily. And so the last time I ran for election, I was, tail between the legs after the votes were counted. I tell you that to give you some encouragement here, that you're not running against somebody who has any experience in winning an election. So there's a lot to talk about. I'm really anxious to hear the questions, to respond to the questions. Our city faces challenges as any city of 100,000 people would face. We have opportunities. Some of them were already mentioned by my two opponents, and it's all good fodder for understanding what we can do. There's a scripture in the Bible that says iron sharpens iron. And by us coming together and putting our thoughts together, we might be coming at some problem from two different angles. By putting our thoughts together, a better result is had for the city. So I'm looking forward to this discussion.
These folks are running in Ward 4, Position 2. So Ward 4 is fairly easy to determine. It runs north and south of Weddington, right? Out Weddington, as Brandon said earlier, West Fayetteville. And so these folks want to be advocates for the folks that live out that area, that very rapidly growing area. So City Council, here's the kind of job that these folks are running to do. The City of Fayetteville operates under a mayor-council form of government. In this system, City Council is the legislative and policy-making body of city government. The Fayetteville City Council sets city policy by passing ordinances and resolutions. The council also determines the city budget and appoints and removes certain board, committee, and commission members. To locate the ward and city council members, if you're here because this is Ward 4, or if you're here because you just wanted to hear this information and you live somewhere else, you may go to My Fayetteville Services, type in an address, and it will show you the ward in which you live. So you'll be able to find out who the representatives are or want to be. So, folks, we have a housing crisis. Probably if I polled this small group, it would not be unlikely to have a 100% response of folks that agree with that. We know it is because the city council, the council you want to sit on, declared that we have a crisis. That was back in April of this year. And most of the folks that we've heard from down at the chamber with our polling and from our various members agree. Now, I want to read something else that sort of helps us set the stage for where we are in this whole thing. The #1 issue affecting regions across the country is housing. We're seeing this issue very clearly in our region with companies we serve, even international companies. They all want to know where their people will live. And that's Tom Kucharski, who is a past president of International Economic Development Council. Our Fayetteville Chamber is a member of that organization. Consequently, we believe that they have a lot of credibility around the world. So he says the number one issue is housing, and that's why we're going to talk about housing quite a bit here as we begin. So the first question, and we'll start with you, Brandon, is, I'm sorry, we're going to go in order here. So, let's see. Brandon and Todd, yeah. Went to all three. So we'll start again with you, Brandon. Is the crisis, and we talked about this in our interviews, is the crisis, housing crisis, mainly one of shortage or affordability?
Well, thank you for the question, Wayne. Those are that's pretty easy to answer. I'd say they're both connected. Affordability is linked to the commodity of the amount of houses we have in Fayetteville. So I'd say they're interlinked. And just to expound on that, I would say that the way we're going to find relief is through reform here. We do have a lot of great programs that are benefiting the housing crisis here in Fayetteville, such as the Fayetteville Housing Task Force. But there is a great amount of other ideas that we can copy and paste from around the country that are going to help part of Fayetteville. Zoning and land use reforms, financial incentives and support, public-private partnerships. There are a number of ideas that we can dive deeper into, and I think we can find some success there. Inclusionary zoning, we've talked about 71B, density bonuses, upzoning, relaxed regulations, grants and subsidies I see as being a huge part of this crisis and a part of the solution. Lower interest loans, collaborating with developers and utilizing vacant properties. I see how housing preservation is a major success that we've seen here in the city of Fayetteville, and I would want to build on that. Supporting existing affordable housing and making sure that the assets we do have in Fayetteville are given the support that they need to continue their growth. Streamlining permitting process on the city council. That seems to be a bit of a rub for a lot of businesses. And one day gone by with an issue of zoning is a day of profit for every small business out there. And so I think a diligent attention to these issues and an understanding that businesses simply can't exist without streamlining this process on the city board, I think are critical to getting out of this crisis. We've had a number of reasons that this has happened. A lot of catalysts out there, and there's really no point in going back in time and trying to post-mortem all this. We're just going to have to find some solutions. We're going to have to work together with a balanced approach to come up with some support for low-income families specifically. And I feel strongly that this is probably the number one issue on the city board right now. So,
Okay, thank you. Monique?
I agree. It's a both and question. I can tell you I've been doing housing research for a couple of years now. I've traveled back to Texas. There's if you would like to do some research around it, they've kind of solved for their homeless issues in Austin. The one thing that they said, and I 100% agree, is housing doesn't solve homelessness. Community solves homelessness. We as a community have to do the work to address the different parts of homelessness and housing. Number one, we have the transitional housing, where we're housing individuals that are long-term homeless. And we're solving that right now as we work through transitional housing. We have to understand that they can work themselves out of a house. So we have Solomon Birchfield that's doing the work, and we have New Beginnings, and they're working on the tiny homes in the smaller village that can only take a certain amount of people in. But as they do well, they get a job, they get clean, they're on Social Security, they're stable, their mental health is stable, they work themselves out of a house. then there's no permanent placement housing. And they work themselves back into the community where there tends to be more crime in that area and it's drug infested. So it's like a cycle in that system. When they come out of that system, they are not going into affordable housing. What's affordable to me may not be affordable to him. What is affordable housing? We have to define it, and we have to create plans in order to meet the needs of the Alice population. Alice is asset, limited income, constrained employment. They are working. It's a lot of people that are working in Fayetteville, but they cannot afford to work, pay their rent, pay their utilities, and buy food. This is where I'm stepping in with the food insecurity, but I can't step in with housing right now until we make some changes as a city. As a city, we have to recognize that we have in our backyard the University of Arkansas, which is a land trust university. There is land available here that we could be using to build more affordable housing, but defining affordable around the Alice population to ensure that somebody's not moving into a house or a senior's not having to move and they can't even buy their medicine.
Okay, Todd?
So we have a big problem, and I'm going to start by just reading from the Wall Street Journal. This was August 11th, about housing affordability. From the Journal, in January 2021, a family needed an income of $49,150 to afford the median-priced single-family home with a 20% down payment, according to the National Association of Realtors Affordability Index. In June 2024, the family would need an income of, wait for it, $110,544 to make the same purchase. Those are strong economic headwinds that we are facing. The headwinds of how properties appreciated through the pandemic, the interest rate now being 6.5% for a home mortgage. Frankly, I don't know many people who have a household income of $110,544 in order to afford a median price home. I myself am not a homeowner. I rent. I have two children, one Gen Zer and one millennial, who believe that they'll probably never be able to afford a house. It would be way beyond their reach. That said, acknowledging the problem, it is going to have to take a lot of creativity. Some of the things that may have already been mentioned by my colleagues up here, to try to get a handle on a solution. I wholly support the mayor's housing affordability task force, and perhaps with those good minds put together, we'll be able to work something at the margins to be able to put even one more person in a house or have housing that didn't have it before, and that's a success.
Okay, thank you all. There was a note of good news. The Housing Crisis Task Force was formed after the City Council, the folks that are on the council now, approved in April a resolution declaring housing crisis. I mentioned that earlier. In the city, the Housing Crisis Task Force was tasked with spending a year to come up with recommendations to give the City Council on ways to alleviate the city's tight housing market. So as an old media guy that I once respected highly, Paul Harvey, used to say, we're not doing nothing about that. So, the city is addressing that situation, working through. In that same article, there were at least 10 suggestions, what I would call technical suggestions made by the Housing Crisis Task Force in their first report, public report. So anybody who wants to see those, you can go back to the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, August 22nd. A good story and several suggestions that were made. So as I said, we're not doing nothing about that. What we do want to do is, or ask about, is the task force itself. When it was first appointed, or after it was appointed, there was a bit of a brouhaha about the makeup of the task force. And I thought that they didn't have any renters on it. And then yesterday, one of our panelists who's running for the council said, yes, they've since have appointed one renter. And so my question simply is, do we have enough representation of renters, seeing as how about 60% of our population are in that category, represented on the task force? So Todd, you go first on this one.
If I had been on the council, I would have voted against adding a couple of special seats for renters. And the reason for that is that the council was just formed. And I think at the very formation, after the people are named, if you keep tinkering with the makeup, then you're like never getting out of the gate. And so, you know, maybe down the line, nothing is in concrete there. Down the line, it may be appropriate to add council members and maybe, you know, designating renters. You know, it was made, Council Member Whitaker, I believe, is the one who made the point that we've all been renters at one time. And that's about true of everybody. And it is true of me right now. But as a renter, I don't have any issue with the fact that I believe that the Housing Crisis Task Force can think beyond their own narrow living situation and try to come up with solutions that fit all people, owners, renters, people who want to buy, people who want the American dream, and everything in between.
Thank you. Brandon, you're next.
Well, thanks again for the question. I think we're in this crisis in large part due to the success of having a great university here, and it's growing. Its enrollment is growing, and what that has done is it's taken some renters off campus, and it's taken some of the supply away from those who are not attending the University of Arkansas. So to me, renters are a critical part of this this problem solving. They are facing higher rental rates than most people with a mortgage. It's in general, it can be up to twice the amount of a mortgage payment for rent. So to me, they have a huge stake in this. And Ward 4 has plenty of rental apartments, duplexes, and all sorts of different rental buildings. So to me, I think you need to involve those who are most affected by it, and that does include bringing in those who suffer the most with this issue. They're the ones who their quality of life is going down. Without rental assistance of some sort through our efforts on the city council, they're choosing between food and medicine, and rent's just taking up the whole pie. It's one big piece of the pie. So to me, renters are important, and we need to hear their voice.
Monique.
Thank you for the question. You know, as I sent back, I truly mean that community solves homelessness. Community can even solve issues around affordable housing. So I know that renters should be included because their voice with lived experience is going to give a different perspective. I'm a homeowner. I moved to Fayetteville 12 years ago, and I was renting. But as a homeowner, I don't have the same perspective that I had 12 years ago. I was at the links, and I was paying $5.50 a month. Of course I'm going to have a different perspective in 2024. I can't speak to somebody, a senior, that their rent is going from $750 to $1,150. In Ward 4, we have Weddington Senior Living. Their rent just got increased at that rate, from $750 to $1,150. 10 of them just moved out. Should they have a voice? Of course they should have a voice. I have a saying, and I've said it for a long time, and I'll say it again. We shouldn't talk about us without us. We should be at the table so we can share the perspective of how changes at the city level is impacting us. It's crucial that we know what it looks like from boots on the ground. How many of you would like to hear from your grandmother, your great-grandmother, or your mother, I have to move because I can't afford to stay where I am? That's the voice that we have to hear from. How do we tackle the issues if we don't know about the issues? Because from a helicopter view, you're not going to see that I wasn't able to buy my medicine. I ran for House Representative last session, and I knocked over 3,000 doors. It breaks my heart to say 90% of the seniors that I knocked doors with, I made connection to get food to them because they were too ashamed to share with their family that their income was taken up by having to pay their rent. We have to allow their voices at the table in order to attack the issues. We cannot talk about it without them. Thank you.
Okay. All right, the next couple of questions, we're going to continue on this subject and deep dive a little bit more, some specifics here. So, Brandon, you're first on this one. Our older neighborhoods are rapidly changing because of infill development. People feel less safe because of the increased traffic. Finding a place to park at home is increasingly difficult. So this was sent in by a citizen. How can the city help longtime residents in our older neighborhoods cope with infill-caused parking shortages and traffic safety concerns?
Well, thank you again for the question. You know, part of this is the house itself. You know, I mentioned earlier housing preservation, and the city of Fayetteville is already doing this. And parking is part of that reassessment of these properties, finding ways that people can use their property, you know, in a way that is practical. Parking is one of the most practical parts of your day-to-day life. So integrating that into what we're seeing in housing preservation, investing in the maintenance and improvement of existing affordable housing. Parking's part of that. It's part of that reassessment. Public transportation is also, but you know, most people drive. We've got a lot of drivers here. We were not the metropolitan area of Houston. You know, we use our cars. We like to drive to the grocery store, and we like to drive to our jobs and get out, and it's part of life. So, in my opinion, taking this housing preservation issue and again attaching parking to this, it just makes sense. And again, Fayetteville's already doing this. This could be an easy add-on. So, thank you.
Monique?
Thank you for the question. As I think about parking, it all ties to the housing as well. And allowing development at higher densities can help create population density. That also goes back to having the access to being able to walk to the grocery store, ride the bike to your friend's house. But I truly believe we also have to tap into the public transportation. We're not using it the way we could. I'm going to tell you, I lived in suburban South Dallas, but I still was able to ride the bus to my dad's house. I was still able to ride the bus to my child's house. I was able to ride the bus downtown. If I want to go to an event right now, downtown Fayetteville, it's a fight for parking spaces. Try going on a Saturday to the Walton Art Center. Try your friends living downtown and you trying to look for parking. But if there was mass transit, y'all would never see me driving my car. I'm just going to say that we have to create a space and a vision for what the future looks like. It's not taking up more parking. It really is creating a density where we can have mixed-use housing, and also you can use that housing and that development to get to the grocery store. It makes me sad to know, living or working in East Fayetteville, that individuals don't have a way, sometimes on the weekend, to go to the doctor. It's not just about parking. Everybody in our community doesn't even have a car. How do we create a space that's livable, walkable, bikeable, and mass transit can get you where you need to go when you need to service not just your needs, but sometimes people are not even able to go to the store to get school supplies for their children. How do we make our community inclusive, where someone can ride a bus just to come and visit me at my house? Thank you.
Todd?
Wayne, could I get you to repeat that question?
Certainly, anytime, y'all just let me know. This deals with some of our older neighborhoods. They're changing because of infill development. Says people feel less safe because of increased traffic, and that's how this topic kind of moved over toward traffic. It says finding a place to park at your home is increasingly difficult. So how can the city help longtime residents in our older neighborhoods cope with infill-caused parking shortages and traffic safety concerns?
Okay. On my campaign website, hertzberg2024.com, hertzberg2024.com, I say that I'm for smart infill. That puts me different than everybody who's for dumb infill, and so I feel really good about that. You know, I have a lot of sympathy for established neighborhoods, and you know, having watched, I think, nearly every city council meeting over the last 4 years on TV, you know, it's happening in the heart of the city, maybe not so much in Ward 4, although maybe in parts of Ward 4 on the east side of the interstate, where there's an established neighborhood and somebody wants to do something. They cobble together 3 or 4 acres of land on the edge of that neighborhood, and they want to do something massively dense in those 3 or 4 acres. You know, I feel like the voice of the residents of the established neighborhood needs to be considered very, very carefully before we just allow, you know, density or mixed use or whatever, just because it checks off a box for us that, you know, we're somehow solving the housing affordability crisis, which we never are with those projects. They always come in at a higher market price, whether it's for rents or for sale. And so I think we have to, in terms of the parking and stuff like that, if you allow the high density rezones next to established neighborhoods, you're asking for infrastructure trouble, traffic, drainage. You're just begging for trouble by doing that. And so I would not be in favor of most of those kinds of situations.
Okay, one more specific question, and Monique, you're going to like this one because you've already addressed it. Now you get a second chance, but your colleagues will also have to. This was sent in, by the way, by a citizen. A well-known senior apartment complex in Ward 4, your ward, was recently in several news outlets after an out-of-state entity purchased it and raised the rents 50 to 73% in some cases. While current state law does not allow the city of Fayetteville to directly intervene to stop rent increases in vulnerable communities, what role do you believe our city can play in assisting residents and holding these out-of-state companies accountable? Monique, you're up first.
Well, you lost me when you said out-of-state purchase. We have to be intentional with who we allow to come in to buy up land and develop in our communities. I ask myself, why are you in my COVID 6 feet? Why are you in Fayetteville wanting to buy land and flip land here? We have to start asking the questions. Is this going to better our community? What's the vision for what you're developing? How do we support that development? How do we support the growth? And I agree with him. Density does harm, not if you plan for it. I'm going to tell you, I worked for Dallas Area Rapid Transit for 10 years. I also worked in human resources. But working in food insecurity, there's a change from week to week. The flow can go from week to week. And I'm telling you, if in HR, I worked under the Japanese, the one thing I learned was lean management and sustainability. What are our sustainability plans when we allow someone to come into our communities and make change? Long term, if you're going to build and there's going to be high density, we should be talking to Ozark Regional Transit about running a bus route in those areas. We should be having those long-term conversations. If we know someone's coming in to make change to senior housing, how do we connect them to additional resources? How do we make sure that they're tapping in and using all the resources, whether it's SNAP, whether it's Medicaid, what benefits are they using to allow them additional funding in order to be able to afford where they're staying. And if they can't afford where they're staying, are we talking to our local government? Are we talking to the Fayetteville Housing Authority property? Is there more Section 8 housing available? Is there funding available? What is HUD providing for our senior citizens that we are not including? What are we doing to use the resources what we have? And then how do we sustain those resources? What does sustainability plans look like for developers coming into our community today, tomorrow, and 10 years from now? And if we're not going to plan for it, I'm going to tell you 10 years is still going to come. I'm going to tell you like my grandma said, keep laying down and waking up. It's going to happen.
Okay. All right, Todd. This is a Ward 4 issue, so you need an opportunity to verbally joust with this thing. What are we going to do if you're elected to the council, each of you?
Well, we'll start out with the premise of the question. Out-of-state investors coming in and buying. I mean, there is such a thing as called the Commerce Clause, and you can't, somebody can't be discriminated against because they live in Texas, California, Hawaii, or Rhode Island if they want to come in and buy up some apartment complex. And, it's just like all of those new student housing developments that are blossoming around the university and have recently been through council. The developers have their certain intents of what those communities are going to be like, and we're going to have a coffee shop on the corner of this, little part of this building and all that. And almost none of it is enforceable because, or none of it is, because they're building those things not to build and own, they're building those to build and sell. And, that's just the model. It's going to be, all that stuff is going to be owned by some private equity group, some real estate investment trusts and stuff like that. And there's nothing that you can do in the city of Fayetteville to say, we only want Fayettevillians to be able to buy things in Fayetteville. I thought for a long time on the short-term rental, the Airbnb things that it seems so unfair that people were Airbnb-ing in neighborhoods where they wouldn't be able to find that on a map if they had to. They were just out-of-state investors telling some realtor to go buy a piece of property and we're going to Airbnb it. That is so different than somebody who lives in that neighborhood, maybe has lived there for 20 years and needs now to move into assisted living and wants to do an Airbnb in their house. So, I guess, there are certain limitations, state laws, federal laws, that we can't say, we're going to now only allow, people from Arkansas or people from Washington County to buy up our apartment complexes. It's simply illegal. We can't do it.
Okay. Brendan?
Yes, well, I would take issue with a couple of those comments. I would say, first of all, I identify as a strong capitalist. It's not our place on the city board to stop the transaction of a purchase of property from out of state just because they're Texans. And look, I don't like the Longhorns either, but we can't, it's just not our place. It's not our role. Having said that, capitalism does create a lot of vulnerable people. And I do see a duty on the city council in that regard to protect the vulnerable. And the practical way, I think, to do that is through zoning that can offer a better future, specifically for our seniors. They're not going to be re-entering the workforce, more than likely. Some are forced to, and that's a cold reality. But I see it as our duty is to safeguard them in their most critical moment of need. It is our duty as a city council member to identify, seek out those vulnerable in our ward and elsewhere, to find ways that can mitigate a hike of that proportion. That's abusive and it's wrong. And I think there are ways that the city council can intervene, and I think bringing in those who are affected and understanding what they're going through is the first step to finding out how we can solve that problem.
All right, thank you all for addressing that micro issue in your award. Let's go back out a little bit now to a macro issue, zoning. Recently, and this article that I have here is from August 25th, Arkansas Democrat Gazette, the Planning Commission and city staff proposed a corridor plan, and it has gone to the council, it's been discussed, it'll be discussed again. The plan would put more than 600 acres along the highway through the middle of town, we all know 71B, into a new zoning district. The commission voted to approve the designation 6-2. Now that was the Planning Commission, not the council yet. The city wants to beautify the corridor by adding trees and other improvements and add sidewalks along both sides, put in covered bus stops, improve intersections, and add medians. And the corridor plan would allow housing in the area, and that's the nugget we want to look at because we're on that housing issue. The corridor has been a business strip for decades, zoned almost exclusively for non-residential use. The one goal of the plan is to ease the city's tight housing market. I think you alluded to it earlier as density, required density. So the planners are saying that much of the city's existing water and sewer service runs along that 71B corridor. Allowing housing along the corridor, including multifamily development, would allow more housing without extending city utilities to new areas. Having heard that summary of this proposal on zoning, would you vote for this plan if it is the final proposal and is brought to the city council? And Todd, you go first.
I'd try to vote twice for it if I could. It makes perfect sense to try to put people along behind 71B. It's already the amount of impervious ground is, overwhelming. By redeveloping it, we could actually perhaps add some green space, certainly add some walkability. That's all very good things. Frankly, I don't see a downside, and I'm not going to take my 2 minutes. I'm 100% in favor of rezoning that.
Good, thank you. All right, Brandon, you're next.
Well, thank you again for the question. To me, this is the low-hanging fruit. I mean, 71B is, if we're talking about walkability, if we're talking about transportation, this is where you're going to find it. It's strategically, it's where everything already is and has been for some time. Fayetteville's just going to grow whether we like it or not. We are urbanizing, and the way to do that is to do it with a responsible approach to sustainability and identifying these environmental impacts before these plans are voted through. That sort of due diligence, I think, is critical. Working from behind, that can often lead to rush decisions. And so identifying these issues with stakeholders in the community, experts, specialists, that's going to be key to identifying the feasibility of a plan like this. And I am in favor of this proposal. There's no reason you can't have housing and up top and retail down below with a thriving, bustling economy. I think it helps with our affordable housing issue. I think it helps in terms of proximity to local businesses. It gives folks an opportunity to have that quality of life that you see in other parts of the country. Again, Fayetteville, we are on every single list, it seems, top 10 list of best place to live in the country, best place in the nation. And so they're coming in droves, and we are going to have to find a place for people to integrate into our lovely town. It's just so nice. We can't keep them away. And certainly those who live here, those should receive the priority in terms of, they live here. They've built their lives here. And so we have to be sensitive to that, particularly with businesses along 71B. We can't be shuttering any businesses on account of development for someone coming from across the country. We need to pay close attention to all these issues on the front end of this. And so, again, I am supportive of this development, but I think there are plenty of facets to ponder and to have a healthy discourse on the city council regarding.
Okay, Monique.
Thank you for that question. When you ask that question, you start talking about bus stops. You talking my language. So just going back though, I spoke about it earlier. I definitely vote for it because density 100% adds to mixed use development. My younger life, I grew up in Dallas, and I went to church downtown Dallas, and I saw this same thing happen from them taking Main Street out of downtown Dallas into East Dallas. And what you find is mixed use development works better in urban environments. And what we want to do is we want to grow our mixed use development in order to solve for problems. And it also keeps us on the track with our growth and development as it relates to not just the population, not just with new businesses coming in. It helps us, just like you said, it helps we don't have to start changing water mains and building out further into the city in order to develop something that's already there. Building on what we already have and including mixed-use housing and affordable housing. I mean, I always say we need to talk about what affordability is because the median rent is $1,400 in the state of Arkansas. Is that affordable for everybody? It may not be. But we really have to talk about when we make these changes, are we going to really be offering affordable housing? I can also say it enhances the flexibility, again, to the ground floor, to individuals being able to walk to work, to walk to school, to walk to the grocery store, to catch the bus from one place to the next, which will reduce traffic. I'm going to talk about it because I live in Ward 4 and I stay away from Weddington. And that's just the truth. We know how do we solve for it? How do we solve for it before it happens? Going down 71B, I know that we have buses that run once every hour. That's really not going to work for that improvement. We have to be having conversations right now with Ozark Regional Transit on how do we find federal funding through the Federal Transportation Department and Department of Transportation for more funding for longer and more bus routes in that area if we're going to build out.
Okay. If you're keeping score at home, I heard 3 yeses. So we know what we can count on if we get a council member from this ward, from one of you. We appreciate that. All right, let's move on. Brandon, you're first on this one. Should the city council consider raising the limits on the heights of new buildings? Now, we've talked a little bit about infill and we've talked a little bit about density, and the idea is building up instead of out. Nobody has used the S word yet. Sprawl, you might want to work it into your conversation later, but should the city consider raising the height significantly? Now, there are some zones where 7 stories are allowed. I think there may be a zone where 10 stories are. But, talk to some of the cities to the north of us, and they're talking significantly higher than that. So 14 stories or higher. Should the city council consider raising heights limits or remove the limits that currently are on those? Brandon? Well,
the skyline of Fayetteville is a beautiful thing. We've got a mountainous area, and there are parts of our infrastructure that go back 150 years. I think there are parts of Fayetteville where that's not necessary. We do not need to remove that height requirement or maximum because it would take away from the culture of our town. It would take away from the identity of Fayetteville Square, of Dixon Street, of the historic district, there are so many parts of our city that I think are worth protecting because we don't want to look like every other city across the country. We want to look like Fayetteville. And so I think, having a pragmatic approach, a case-by-case decision is what would be appropriate. I think if we're going to seriously consider affordable housing and student housing, there are some legs to that. But I think it has to be the right fit. Thank you.
Yes. Monique?
Thank you for the question. As I think about the sprawl and our heights, we have to stop thinking small, because if we're going to continue to think small, we're going to have more land usage. Do we want to put everything, a small house on a small lot, and build out? We're at some point going to have to start building up. I look at Hillcrest Towers right now that serves a senior living home, and it works for them. It works really well for them. How do we model what's working and create sustainability plans? I agree. I attend St. James. They've been in Fayetteville for 159 years. We're doing something right here. At some point in time, we have to evaluate what works well for us and how can we add to it to sustain it. As I think about the sprawl that could happen, there are some areas that need to be zoned where we don't need to build up. But where we need to, why haven't we started already? I ask myself, what are we waiting on? It's 2024. Are we waiting until another big developer comes in and shows us plans? We have to proactively start talking about how do we sustain what we have? Are there other senior homes that could be built up and we can put seniors in and not be building out? There's supportive services around that are here. There's grants that we should be looking at to say, what can we do to sustain what we have and continue to grow up instead of out and not pushing individuals out of their housing? Thank you.
Todd, your turn.
Yeah, I think it's not a yes/no answer about the height. There's absolutely many places in the city where if you went above 7 stories, it would be out of place. But then there's plenty of places, especially around downtown, that if Hilton wanted to come in and build a 12-story hotel, a flagship hotel across from the Federal Building on Mountain Street, I would vote for that in a heartbeat, because I think we need investment in those downtown areas. And I don't think it's either or. We stack people on top of each other and see how high they go, or we sprawl them out. I think the market should determine. People like different kinds of housings. If you have a dog, you don't want to live on the 12th floor of anything. Really, you don't. If you have small children, you don't want to live on the 12th floor. I don't think that there's anything wrong with somebody wanting to have their own backyard. Now, we have an affordability problem that's getting to be out of reach for a lot of people, but there's nothing inherently evil about a subdivision further out on Weddington that would provide the quarter acre with the backyard where you throw the ball for your dog and stuff like that. I mean, people just simply desire that. It's, in many senses, it's the American dream. It's not necessarily the American dream for everybody to live on the 14th floor of going up to a tall building. It may be the dream for senior citizens who are tired with the yard. It may be a dream for young professionals, but we can't stick everybody in the same category and say you can either have your tall buildings or it's sprawl. My daughter Holly, who holds a seat right now, she wouldn't have a house if there wasn't some builder at some point who built Fieldstone subdivision and gave another 300 homes out there. And so I really don't think it's either or. I think tall buildings in the right place would be fine, but it's also, I don't think the quarter acre home, the quarter acre lot is not destroying our town. It has its place also.
Thank you. All right, you're all going to be whichever one's elected, you're going to be a team player on the council. So even though my question now deals with the eastern side of town, this could happen to you too. The city has recently limited water use for irrigation by folks over on the eastern side. And Todd, you used your daughter as an example. I use my daughter and son-in-law as an example. They live in that area. They were gone to Europe when this came out, and I sort of had to go out there and make sure that their automatic watering system was not going to get them in trouble when they got back. at any rate, that irrigation was limited in the eastern parts of the city. So is this an indication that we have an infrastructure problem? Monique, you're first.
Thank you for that question. I don't think it's an infrastructure problem. I know it's an environmental problem. We have to know, and we all have a obligation to take care of our community and take care of our earth. We should be careful about how much water we're using, and a city shouldn't have to tell us that. We should be recycling. We should be composting. There are things that we can do as a community to look out for each other. And am I going to wait for the city to tell me not to water my yard so everybody can have access to water? No, I'm going to be fair. I'm going to be equitable, and I'm going to make sure that I do my part to ensure that I'm taking care of the earth. That's my reasonable service, is to compost. It's my reasonable service is to make sure that I'm just not running my AC while I'm gone all day. It's reasonable, not because I have the money to pay the bill. It's because I want to be fair, not just to my community, but also to the earth that gives back to us. And if we don't start taking care of it now, climate change is going to really change some things for us today. That's one part of climate change is what are we doing to care for our earth today in order to be ready for my children's children? I have 9 grandchildren. When they come to Fayetteville, I want them to be able to play outside. So I take them to a water park. I'm not going to run my hose all day and have them play outside in the water. I want to make sure I'm taking care of my community and taking care of my water. Thank you.
Todd, infrastructure.
You know, sometimes the best answer is, I don't know. I mean, I would have to do a deep dive into what the infrastructure is currently in East Fayetteville. Where are the pinch points? What improvements or deferred improvements weren't made that should have been made? So it doesn't do anybody in this room or anybody listening on the YouTube channel for me to talk about something I just don't know. I don't know if the infrastructure needs substantial improvement there or not. I do know from listening to city council meetings that our infrastructure in many parts of the city has limitations that we are starting to bump up against. And if you can't provide sewer, you can't provide anything.
Okay, thank you. Brandon?
Thank you for the question.
I'm an outspoken environmentalist myself. It's obviously one of the major issues of my generation. Having said that, when the potable water isn't coming on, something is wrong, okay? This is definitely an issue of neglect for infrastructure. When water runoff runs into our city water and our streams, it hurts our environmental outlook. So to me, additional infrastructure is going to help protect some of that. At the same time, it's going to help protect people's property, people's homes, and their small businesses. So to me, investing in Fayetteville, that's always a good decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Staying with water, the city of Fayetteville currently, as a revenue source, sells water to nearby communities. Should, and we just talked about, perhaps we have some problems, but perhaps not. There's also an article this week about Beaver Lake, and that it was a tremendous resource, and that we appear not to have any concerns about water in the future. But in light of that, should the city continue selling water to other cities? Todd, you're first.
The people in Elkins and Farmington probably enjoy a shower in the morning. I don't know that they have any other choice than buy water from us. And so, frankly, it's always a dispute about how much we charge them for the water. But I cannot imagine us telling our neighboring cities, nor do I necessarily think it's would be lawful to do so, that, you know, pound sand, you're not getting any more water from Fayetteville. So I think it's all about whether the amount that we charge is fair to both Fayetteville and our taxpayers and the residents who purchase the water from us in neighboring communities. You know, the thing is, Wayne, is that, you know, where do people shop if they live in Elkins? They shop in Fayetteville. Where do people shop if they live in Greenland? They shop in Fayetteville. Where do they shop if they live in Farmington? They shop in Fayetteville. Where do people say when they're traveling around the country and somebody says, where are you from? They might be living within the corporate limits of Farmington, and they'll say, I'm from Fayetteville, Arkansas. I mean, the community extends beyond the political fine line of our city limits, and I think we have to live that way.
Thanks. Brendan?
Yes, sir. You know, the primary duty of the Fayetteville City Council is to govern Fayetteville. It's not to govern all of Washington County. It's to look after the citizens of Fayetteville. Having said that, we do need to be good neighbors. We need to be respectful of other people's primary needs. Water's probably the most primary need any person has. You wouldn't last 3 or 4 days without it. So to me, it's a complicated issue. Many cities, my hometown included, Hot Springs, it has 3 lakes, and it's still bringing in water from Lake de Grey. So to me, it is a national issue. Again, it's an environmental issue that is greatly affected by global warming and everything that we're seeing. It will be even more critical as we grow as a city. But these outlying towns and communities, they need us. They need our leadership here in Fayetteville. And although we do not have jurisdiction over those small communities, I do think that they look to us for leadership. They look to us for consensus building, for help. We have resources and revenue here that other parts of Washington County don't have. And so we have to be a good neighbor to those towns and those communities. But our primary goal here is to grow Fayetteville responsibly. And so that means protecting our assets at the same time. So I may be riding that fence good and well, but I think we've got to find an approach that safeguards our assets and at the same time provides that good Samaritan aspect of looking after those, especially in the rural communities where they're just not going to be able to develop that infrastructure.
Monique?
It's a great question. My answer is 100% yes, we should continue selling water to our neighboring cities. When you asked that question, the first 3 things that came to my mind is we care about our communities. And if we care, we have to collaborate with our communities. We're better together. We're better together to tackle issues, but we have to care. As a community, the city of Fayetteville cares not just about our community, but about our neighbors. We care if they eat every day. We care if they have water. What's the best thing I can show a neighbor about caring is voting for water. That's a minimal. That's something that's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer because water can kill, water can heal, but we have to be in a position to say, we love you and we're willing to share and we're willing to continue to sell. And I'm gonna talk about it till I beat this dead horse. Sustainability. We're talking about it today. We've been doing it in order to bring our traditions that we've had in the past. How do we talk about progress in the future? If we're talking about it now in 2024, are we talking to mayors? Are we talking to the county? Are we talking to how do we support them in 2034? If we say we care, let's talk about what's the sustainable plan for our future, about caring for our neighbors. Thank you.
Okay. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip a question here. Does anybody object if that messes up our rotation just a little bit? You're still all going to get to answer okay. So next question, Monique, that's why I said it messes things up. You just finished, but you're going to go first again. How do you feel about cooperative planning for the Northwest Arkansas region?
Cooperative planning is the way I function every single day. So as the director of the St. James Food Pantry, my biggest supporter and is the Northwest Arkansas Food Bank. But I also partner with Starbucks, and I partner with Come and Go, and I partner with Einstein Bagels. Oh yeah, and I partner with Cobblestone Farms, and I partner with Apple Seeds. Collaboratively, as a community, if we isolate ourselves and don't work in a collaborative way in order to build and sustain, we stunt our growth. We stunt what we can do, how we can do it, how we can access resources. It is collaboratively how we're going to continue to sustain the growth that's happening here in Northwest Arkansas. I have the only food storage locker in the state of Arkansas, and that's because I collaboratively worked with the University of Arkansas Medical Sciences, Walmart, the Jesus Christ Church for Latter-day Saints. We have to think outside of what causes comfort for us. And sometimes growth is uncomfortable. If we're going to be visionaries, if we're going to be supportive of growth and change and trajectory into progress for this city, we have to think collaboratively, not within our community, outside of our communities, outside of our boxes that we're in. And we're going to have to work with individuals locally, statewide, in order to meet the needs of our community.
Okay. Todd, regional cooperation, cooperative planning.
If you had worded it slightly differently, I would have been able to nail that yes box for you there.
What words do I need to use?
Should Fayetteville work collaboratively with the other entities in this region
That'll
for
be
better
fine.
outcomes? The answer is yes.
Good.
I'm trying to defer to Mr. Rayburn, who has deadlines, and keep it short. Of course, we need to work collaboratively with all the entities in Northwest Arkansas. We go up there for the airport. They come down here for Razorback games. We go up there for Crystal Bridges. They come down here to Dixon Street. We live in a region, not in our own little universe here in Fayetteville, and it just makes common sense to take cognizance of that. Can't imagine anybody having an opposite answer to that.
Okay, you've thrown the gauntlet out there, Brandon. You're last on this question. What do you think?
Well, I would agree with my colleagues. I would say, we do have several unique identities that run along 49. Fayetteville, we're funky. Springdale, Chickentown, and agriculture, among others, where I also work, and it is becoming a fast-growing health corridor. Rogers is a big part of our business community. Bentonville, there's a small store up there that's doing quite well. And Bella Vista is a big part of our retirement capacity here in Northwest Arkansas. We all have our own identity as each of the cities do, but we do need to work collaboratively. We do affect one another. Our city limits are getting closer and closer, in terms of the growth that you see. A couple great examples are the Northwest Arkansas Bike Trail. That's something that we've done together as a region for a long time now, and it's been a huge hit. It's a huge boon for our economy. It's something that most people brag on when you talk about Northwest Arkansas. Other collaboratives, such as the Northwest Arkansas Trade Council, they create a communication hub that allows people in different industries to get together on a regular basis and talk about how they're affecting one another. So I think we already are doing this to a certain extent. The bike trail's been around for a while, and we see that that growth affecting so many parts of our ward and Ward 4. So I think we are working collaboratively, and I think we should continue to do so.
Good, thank you all. Okay, next question, and Todd, this goes to you first. I'm gonna skip some preliminary remarks about the Supreme Court rulings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and just cut to the question. Should the city, Fayetteville City Police, continue to clear out homeless camps, and should the no camping in the city ordinance be more aggressively enforced?
So, just ask that one more time, make sure I'm on track here.
Okay.
Please.
It's kind of a two-parter. Should the police continue to clear out homeless camps? They're called camps. We could be called various things, but these are folks gathered sleeping outdoors on public property. Should the no camping in the city ordinance be more aggressively enforced?
Okay, so I feel like I have a great deal of background in homelessness. I directed our church's homeless ministry for 13 years in Clearwater, Florida. Know hundreds of homeless people by their first name, had many stay in my house, throw up in my toilet, sweat a fever off on my couch. And so I feel like I have a good background on who the homeless population is. One of the problems with the homelessness crisis issue is just simply you can't solve that without providing people with significant wraparound services to support their mental health and emotional health. And my experience is that most homeless people have huge trust issues. They can't trust a boss, therefore can't keep a job. It borderlines paranoia or perhaps actual paranoia. And that's beyond the social pathologies of drugs and alcohol and all of that. So they're going to sleep somewhere. They're going to sleep somewhere, but if we have ordinances on the books, then they should be enforced. And if the ordinance isn't right, then that's what the city council is supposed to do. Change the ordinance to make it right as to what is appropriate. But if you're going to have an ordinance that says you can't throw up a tent in a city park, I would be in favor of enforcing that ordinance, and the homeless, you know, they would just have to, you know, and they're very good at moving along, and that's what has to happen. If the ordinance isn't right, and we want sleeping in public parks and along trails and all that, then that would be a political decision for the city to change that ordinance. But as long as the ordinance is on the book, it needs to be enforced.
Thank you. Brandon?
Well, I will say that this is obviously a complicated issue. If there were some silver bullet solutions out there, it would have already been solved. And if I knew what they were, I would be running for president instead of city council. It's a national issue. It is just complex. I would say some of those, I would say some of my ideas are increasing affordable housing. I think that's why you're seeing so many homeless. I think that's why people are pitching a tent in the park, is because they just simply can't find a reasonable rental price and a place to call home. I think providing mental health and substance abuse support, we know these are often linked with the homeless. I think that's a critical component of this. I think providing access to funds to prevent homelessness, such as keeping people from being evicted. I mean, once you become homeless, it is so hard to get out of that. It really is. There's so many obstacles that just you don't even consider until you've been in that position. I think ensuring access to shelter during weather emergencies and continuing the SAFE program, there are so many things that we can and should be doing. Things we already are doing, the HEARTH program. It's designed to aid those experiencing homelessness by providing transitional or permanent supportive housing to qualified applicants. The City of Fayetteville is already spending $1.6 million on this issue, and it is an issue worth fighting for. Those funds are so critical to people's quality of life. And if that's what we're doing here as City Council members, improving the quality of life, we have to consider each and every face that we see in Fayetteville. And often homeless people are ignored. They are walked past, they are driven past, they are not considered important. And I think that Fayetteville is leading the way in our community, in our county, with Seven Hills, the Salvation Army, New Beginnings. They have a great tiny home community. There are things that we can do to address this problem rather than attack the symptoms.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Brandon, I appreciate it. Monique?
It's a great question. I disagree. I don't think we need to be spending our money that way. I think we do need to be investing that. That's a lot of money that we're pouring into the police department to clear grounds. And I heard your question. You said to aggressively enforce this. The unhoused population is my community. The unhoused population are my neighbors. I feed them every single week at the food pantry. They're people. They're women and men that need to be seen, heard. Their voice needs to be included. And we shouldn't just say they're them and us. And if we do, you should be ashamed of yourself because they're still Fayetteville. Every single week I meet somebody new with a different story. And the services were here. We have the Crisis Stabilization Unit here in Northwest Arkansas to address issues around mental health issues. Right now, there's 100+ homeless individuals in jail. That's not where they need to be if they're dealing with mental health issues. Systems are working. The CSU has been funded by this great state of Arkansas. Our own governor is funding it. It's working in Sebastian County. It's working in Pulaski County. How come it's not working in Washington County? It's because we see that as a them and us. Until we start pouring funding in support of services with Salvation Army, with Seven Hills, with HEARTH program, things are not going to change here. We shouldn't be aggressively moving anyone. We should be aggressively investing in the Crisis Stabilization Unit in our own backyard to help our family members, our communities, get the supportive services they need instead of putting them in jail beds.
Thank you. We're going to squeeze in one more question before the closing remarks. In light of yesterday's school shooting tragedy in Georgia, which I think we're all aware of, let's discuss school resource officers. This tragedy reminds us that students can be put at risk every day when they go to school. SROs are a resource for student protection. So our current council has considered and debated and discussed fundraising our funding for SROs at the highest level possible, meaning the most SROs that they could afford. So our school district has requested SROs. So the question is, would you vote for a proposal to fund an SRO in every building of every public school in Fayetteville? Todd, you're first.
So, In, the background here, in 2020, the city council voted 7-1 against accepting grant money to put more SROs in the schools. Fast forward to August of 2022, in the wake of the Uvalde school shooting in Texas, the city council voted 8-0 for Resolution 190, which is to roll out by adding 2 school resource officers every year until all 16 schools have a school resource officer. I am pleased to report that now, with this new school year, we have a full-time school resource officer in Holt Middle School and Owl Creek Middle School. And I drive on Ruppel Road, and I see those squad cars parked very visibly in the parking lot in front of the school. And as a citizen, I feel like that is a protection for the school children of this town. But the political winds can shift. And there are voices in the community, well-meaning voices for sure, who would like to roll back and defund the school resource officer program. Therefore, it has been a matter of vote at City Council both in 2023 and 2024 to try to not accept grant money to continue the rollout. We don't know what's going to happen in this election. DeAndre Jones has been a strong supporter of the SRO program. He's in the battle, the political battle of his life, whether he can succeed. We don't know where the votes will stand, but if something can go from 7-1 against to 8-0 in favor within 2 years, it can also go the other way. I will tell you one thing, and that is, if I'm elected to this seat on the city council, I will be 100% in favor of continuing Resolution 190 to roll out school resource officers to every school in the city of Fayetteville. And the thing is that is not controversial. People get up at the podium and speak and say, I'm a liberal, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative. I want my kids to be safe in school, and I think that's a fair expectation.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate it. Brandon, you're next.
Yes, I fully support school resource officers and the program, as well as adding armed Fayetteville police officers in our schools. Children and teenagers are our most precious resource. They are the future of our city, state, and nation. This is a generational issue for me, much like climate change. It has affected my generation a great deal. The numbers are staggering. Additionally, SROs and other officers provide valuable role models for students, as well as teaching kids how to interact with police officers on a regular basis and at a young age. SROs teach kids how to speak to police officers respectfully. They teach kids that police are real people in their community who are there to help when needed. But most importantly, increased armed police presence in our schools will decrease the response time for shootings and make our kids safer at school. The Fayetteville Public Schools asked for these school resource officers. They are the teachers and administrators on the ground, and we should value and listen to their voices. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, folks, we appreciate the work. I've had to cut a few questions out because
Can I
you've
answer
given.
that question? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, did you not?
I did not. I've been waiting my turn. I'm over here squirming in my chair to answer
I put a
that
check by your name and I shouldn't have, Monique. Please go ahead.
Let me say this. There's a member of my family that are police officers. If someone breaks in my home, I'm going to call 911. But I'm going to tell you that guns don't kill people, people kill people. I'm going to tell you, as a mother of 7 and a grandmother of 9, that statistics show that school resource officers in school is an adverse impact to people of color. I'm going to tell you, in the city of Fayetteville, 65% of black and brown individuals have graduated from high school with a record because of a school resource officer. I'm passionate about it because it's impacted my family all the way down to my grandchildren. My grandchildren are of the age 1 to age 14. I had to take a call this year in Plano, Texas, because a school resource officer was bullying my twin granddaughters because she's wearing a 9mm gun on her hip. I'm going to tell you that we don't need a school resource officer in a kindergarten school. I'm going to tell you the first statement I heard this morning is the school administration staff stepped up and did their jobs. I think if we train individuals in school in order to act, they could dismantle some of this. But school resource officers tend to arrest and harass black and brown individuals every single day in school. I'm an advocate. I partnered with the Fayetteville Police Department to deliver food boxes. I have partnered with the Washington County Sheriff's Department for the last 4 years because I know we can do things better together. In schools around children does not stop school shootings. What helps is for allowing administrators to use the policies that's already in place in order to redirect children. And my final statement on it is understanding that if a child could leave school with a criminal record and end up being interviewed by a police officer at school, but the statement they made outside the presence of an adult to protect them and end up in juvie because they were not protected by a parent, an adult, or a guardian from making a statement that could be criminalized against them later is wrong.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we've run out of time. We're ready to finish up with our closing statements, and the way the rotation is come, Monique, since you're warmed up right now, you get to give the first closing statement. Please proceed.
Well, if you weren't here earlier, my name is Minister Monique Jones. I am running for City Council Ward 4, and it's because I love my community. It's because I'm raising my child with a special need here. It's because I want to be the person that if you have a question in my ward, that I'm going to listen, I'm going to research, and I'm going to try to connect you to the resource to get an answer to that question. I value everyone's voice. I value everyone as an individual. I actually love a lot of you in this room. I can't do anything alone. I know that we're all better together. But it's going to take all of us to see each other, to hear each other, to value what we all bring to the table at the city council. I value my current members. I value my current mayor. I value my chamber. I love my chamber. Don't get me started. But I'm here to tell you that all of that works together in order for us to be a better city. If and when I win, if I don't, just know I'm still going to do the work. I'm going to be here to support my community. As a small business owner, I support small businesses by mentoring and doing business mentoring. I support our community by doing life coaching and life mapping. I support Startup Junkie because I know as a community and small business owner, if we don't continue to grow, we will stifle our growth here in Northwest Arkansas. People are going to still come, but our growth will be stifled by not supporting the small businesses here. I spend my money in Fayetteville. When my family comes from Dallas, they spend their money in Fayetteville. I don't want them to have to drive up to Bentonville or drive to Rogers to entertain themselves. I want them to stay in Fayetteville, and they feel like this is their vacation home. Really, it's not. But just know, they also know that I'm going to fight for everything that's right. That if I'm passionate, I'm going to love you with my whole heart. I'm going to give and give and give, not just to my community, to this city, to anybody that wants to partner, to anyone that wants to make this a better place to live. And you can always find me on my website, Monique for Jones for Arkansas or Monique for Fayetteville. You can find me on my website. Thank you.
Thanks. Todd, your closing statement.
Thank you for the opportunity to, excuse me, thank you for the opportunity to share a few things with you. I think it was a good afternoon with lots of good thoughts shared by my two colleagues here. And the, you know, the City Council Ward 4 Position 2 is what we call a down ballot position, right? Nobody's coming out to vote for this position, for this election, for this race, who wasn't going to show up to vote for president and all of the other more, higher up items on the ballot. So I really commend anybody who's listening here tonight that they, cared enough. Both here present and on the YouTube channel, to try to figure out how they can make the most intelligent vote that they possibly can, way down ballot on Ward 4 City Council member. That's to be commended. And I think, in many senses, the three of us are in, agreement on many, many issues. If there's a good idea on homelessness, which one of us wouldn't be for it? If there's a good idea on housing affordability for renters, for home buyers, which one of us wouldn't be for it? Of course we would be for it. But the one, item that came late in this program tonight that, does show a distinction among the candidates is school resource officers. I mean, it just flat is. I'm 100% in favor of the school resource officers, and for all of the good reasons that Monique shared, she's not. And so to the extent that elections should be about policy and not a popularity contest, I'm glad it's not a beauty contest or I lose for sure. But if that is your inclination to support school resource officers, that's what I will do. You have my commitment on that.
Thank you, Todd. Brandon?
Thank you, Wayne, for your facilitation this evening. In my closing, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Ward 4. That's why I'm running. I believe in a vibrant and thriving West Fayetteville. We are as much of a contributor to our fair city as any other neighborhood. We deserve the diligent attention of our leaders and their commitment to stand up and provide fair resources that better the lives and enhance the potential of those who reside on the west side of town. I am committed to serving all who live in Fayetteville. I am committed to building a balanced consensus with an approach of respectful problem solving. I am committed to innovation and stability as in regard to our city's budget administration. I am committed to improving the quality of life in this area with common sense ideas. I am committed to growing Fayetteville the responsible way, the right way. It has been great to join you all here today and share my ideas for Ward 4 in the city of Fayetteville. I love this city, and it would be my honor to serve on the city council. I am proud to live in the fastest growing area of Fayetteville, West Fayetteville, and I want to support a vibrant and thriving West Fayetteville that allows everyone to be successful, thriving members of the community. I am committed to being a voice of the people, and I look forward to serving this community. Thank you again for this opportunity to share my vision for our beloved home. If you have more interest in my ideas, please visit brandonspicer.com. Thank you so much.
Okay, folks, there are your candidates for City Council Ward 4, Position 2. Let's have them tell. Thank you. This concludes our fourth forum for the day, and we'll have one more coming up for a few minutes. If you want to hang around, we have a good crowd starting to build for the mayoral contest. Thanks again to the library for hosting us here, and to Ozarks Go and Ozarks Electric for sponsoring. Good job. Good job.
I appreciate it.